Stugatz here. Diehard batteries are like the rare breed of athlete that always plays with a lot of power, but you can also depend on to be on the field game after game. You ask me, that's the type of performance you want under your hood. So head to Advanced Auto Parts, where you can get the reliability, durability, and power of Diehard with free testing and installation from Advanced team members. Advance your auto at Advanced Auto Parts and participating CarQuest locations. See stores for details.
Welcome, everybody, to the Local Hour. We switched some things up. Big Suey landed on your streaming platform of choice first today, and David Samson joins me on the Local Hour, our normal Thursday deal. Happy football season, David. The Hurricanes play today, and I haven't once been cocky Canes fan. I'm going to wait till we actually have the result in hand because been down that road before. I was kind of worried about trotting out David Samson and the David Samson Show here on the day that football kicks off because I was worried, the normal default with David Samson is, sports business and then baseball. Marlins are playing well, which we can talk about that some, and then last night happened. And the Marlins are actually one of the top national news stories. And I got to imagine the Detroit Tigers are counting their lucky stars that the Miami Marlins exist. David, the score, 29-9. I mean, hell of a performance by the Marlins offense. 9 runs. You don't get that every day. But 29 runs! The Atlanta Braves scored 29 runs. That's right. The Miami Marlins lost a Major League Baseball game by 20 runs. A Major League Baseball team lost a game by 19 runs, and that wasn't the worst run differential. David Samson, your thoughts?
Well, there's a pitcher named Jordan Yamamoto, and often what we have to do in a game that's a blowout when our bullpen, let's say we're playing a lot of games in a row, and the Marlins have no days off for the rest of the season. So there's a circumstance where a pitcher just has to wear it, and that's what happened with Yamamoto yesterday. And if you watch the game, you saw Mel Stottlemyre, the pitching coach, go out there, and he gave up, I think, 12 runs or 13 runs. And he didn't go out there to say, hey, listen, you're tipping your pitches, or hey, I think you should use the curveball more. He went out and said the following: there's no one in the bullpen. You're not coming out of the game. You got to get outs for us, and it is going to be what it's going to be. And he left the game with an 18 ERA. He's definitely gone backwards. At the end of last year, there was a thought that he could be in the rotation this season, and he's definitely gone backwards. But every once in a while, you count on one of your arms just to take it for you, and that's what Yamamoto did. But it was something that Adam Duvall, we have to point out, set a record. First time ever, 3 straight home runs in order, a 2-run shot, a 3-run shot, and then a grand slam. And that had not been done before. He was 1 solo homer away from the awesome home run cycle.
You guys have had plenty of seasons during your tenure with the Miami Marlins, and there were plenty of defeats along that tenure, not to poke fun. I mean, you were world champions, but there were plenty of bad defeats too. What is the worst single performance you can remember from a Marlins team, and does it compare to last night's 29-9?
It does. Let me just go backwards 1 second and tell you that when you're in the front office and you lose a game 29-9, I should tell you that for fans, it's fodder on for media and it's sports talk. But when you're in the front office, everyone will tell you who runs a team, you'd rather lose 29-9 than a blown save, because you just wake up the next morning, it's done, and you move on. Blown saves tend to stay with you and they hurt more. Last night's game doesn't hurt the Marlins. They're still in 8th position in the playoffs right now. They have a playoff spot. They're a 500 team. So there's no loss of confidence by players, by a team. You just sort of chalk it up. We had a bunch of those. We had one actually, a rescheduled game from 9/11. And 9/11's on my mind because 9/11 is tomorrow. I cannot believe it's been 19 years. But we lost a game, I think, 21-3 or something in October of 2001. There was a rescheduled game, and I remember thinking we weren't even supposed to be playing that day but for 9/11, and it was just a nightmare game. Just wanted the season to be done with. And then that was the Marlins. Wait a minute, was that the Expos or the Marlins?
2001, were you with Montreal?
I was with the Expos. Right. Did the Marlins lose that in 2002? one of the worst things or the best things about being in the game for so long is the years get so mixed up. I remember certain things about certain years. So I remember the 03 Boston game, which we've covered on this show or on Nothing Personal, where we lost, I think, 25-3 or something like that. And then we won the next day on a Mike Lowell home run. So there's losses that happen, but the most memorable losses for me are not the blowouts at all. The most memorable losses by far are the ones where you blow a save or you have a man on third with no outs down a run and you can't get the run in, things like that. So the Marlins are going to be good. What a great offense. Great pickup with Starling Marte. Great young players. I can't believe I'm being so positive about the Marlins, but I'm just watching them and realizing that what Mike Hill's done is pretty impressive.
I saw one of your observations on Twitter, and I so wholeheartedly agree. I've watched more Marlins games in this shortened season than I have in the last few years. And these black jerseys are a tire fire because I don't know these players' names, right? I'm new to the game. You're trying to get me to know who these players are, right?
Are we crazy?
I cannot read the damn name? I can barely read the numbers, David, on the black jerseys. Who goes black jerseys with black numbers? The outlines don't pick up on TV. I have a pretty good TV. Spent a lot of money on this TV recently, and I still can't make it out. And when it was Jackie Robinson, Dave, forget it. I was lost.
Can you tell me how that passes? Now, listen, this is not sour grapes for changing the uniforms that I loved when we switched to the Miami Marlins.
I hated it. Oh, I want to talk to you about
the rainbow jerseys.
I hated those uniforms. To me,
I loved them.
To me, that's the worst uniform in South Florida sports history.
What? Oh, come on. Some of the old Heat jerseys from back in the day.
The Heat jerseys have never really disappointed, ever. So the Miami Marlins, number one. All right, we can talk about the black jerseys later. Let's talk about your decision because I remember there was a hullabaloo about the logo reveal. You guys had a big party. I remember you on the show, and every week I would take a stab at trying to guess the color scheme. Little did I know I should have just guessed all the colors. Pick a color. Now, it was reputed that Jeffrey Loria, our dealer, he was heavily invested in this process and the overall aesthetic of the team. And what happened? He liked like 3 designs and he decided to combine all of them, David?
No, actually, he was very heavily involved and baseball has to approve all uniforms, by the way, on a side note. So he worked with Major League Baseball and an outside company, and there were tons of different designs, tons of different logos. And the one he fell in love with was the final one. And it was described, it was the Marlins' own blue color that had never been on a jersey. There was a color like the sun. It reminded him of Florida. And it was colorful. He likes color, doesn't like drab. If you look at the ballpark before Jeter changed it, the ballpark was very colorful. And that's sort of the art side of him. I never minded it. Remember when it got leaked, we were pissed. But it was a big seller in 2012. So people really did buy it and wear it. And we see when I've been traveling around the country, I got to tell you, I see more people in that M than I do in the current one or in the former F. Because it just has this feeling of color. I love the jerseys. Some of the players did not. I love the black jerseys. I love the orange jerseys. We had orange hats at one point as well.
Yeah.
And it just didn't last. And when Jeter changed the uniforms, which of course he knew he was going to do because that's what he does. When I saw those black jerseys, I said, how did that get approved? I don't know how MLB approved those jerseys because they're so bad.
All right, so I want to talk to you about designs that you were partial to because I'm sure you saw some of the specs for all the logos, and I'm sure there was a tough decision along the way that had to been made, and maybe there's a good story there. Also, I don't think you see the old Florida Marlins F because that hat at this point is about 20 years old. Not many people have 20-year-old hats. I still rock my Florida Marlins F, and I want to talk to you about the decision to rename the Florida Marlins the Miami Marlins, which I was led to believe was a part of the stadium deal, was it not?
Yeah, you weren't led to believe that's exactly true. That was a time, I think I've told you this, that the county of Miami, who we were negotiating with and getting public money from, and the city of Miami, who was a smaller partner in the deal, they gave the land was the biggest part of their contribution. They wanted the team to be named Miami. Remember back then that the Marlins had a big Miami Broward issue back when Jeffrey bought the team from John Henry and when John bought it from Wayne Huizenga. Wayne Huizenga did not like Miami. He didn't want to be a part of Miami-Dade. He didn't think that Miami was a good market, which is why he built his hockey arena up in Broward. He was very much a Broward guy. So Miami as a community and as a political community, they were sort of raw about that. And they made it a huge deal point. Before giving any public money, they wanted to make sure the team was renamed the Miami Marlins. And we were a no from the beginning. And we said, no, we're the Florida Marlins. We've won a World Series as the Florida Marlins. We've won 2 World Series as the Florida Marlins. We're staying as the Florida Marlins. We're known. We want to appeal to all of Florida. At that time, there was a question whether the Rays would stay in Tampa. So we had dreams that we would own the entire state of Florida. So for us, it was a non-starter. Wink, wink. We didn't care less. But we ended up trading that for it was a great trade in the negotiation where we agreed to rename the team Miami and they agreed to contribute $1 million a year to a capital reserve fund to help the stadium.
Oh my God.
So for us, it was a very simple, easy trade. We held out. In any negotiation, it's like page 1. You pretend you don't want to give something up, even though you know you're willing to, and you have to stick to that plan. You just have to stick to it no matter what. There can't be a leak in your ship. And then at the proper moment, you give in order to get something back. That's how we became the Miami Marlins.
Amazing. That's exactly how I thought that might have happened. And I've also held this long private theory that you guys were probably going to change your name to Miami anyways.
Yes, of course we were, because it was an opportunity to do a rebrand, right? It was a chance to have brand new jerseys, brand new name, brand new start. We wanted a new start. We thought the new ballpark would provide that start, absent Castro, absent the terrible signings and the terrible trades, and absent all the lack of performance. We thought this was our moment in a pretty young franchise to just start over. And it lasted like a day and a half.
I can hear Billy Corbin tweeting about this already. He is going to be made so furious by that revelation. But it seemed pretty common sense if you know anything about our local government and your negotiation tactics.
It's you make it, you said that in such a pejorative way. There was nothing unethical about what we did. There was nothing illegal about what we did.
No, it's just good negotiation.
What?
It's just good negotiating, I guess.
Just business, right? It's just business.
It's nothing personal.
Hey, there you go. It's nothing personal. It was nothing about Billy Corbin. Didn't even know him at the time. It was nothing about anything other than we had to get a deal done. Now, funny enough, the Capital Reserve Fund is only funded for 10 years, and the building is almost 10 years old. So there is going to be a public fight for money. Get ready, Billy Corbin. Derek Jeter is going to have to go to the county for money for the Capital Reserve Fund.
All right, talk to me like I'm an idiot. What does this Capital Reserve Fund pay for? It's a fund that I guess you can just borrow money from at any time to pay any expense. Are there rules around this?
Yes, there are very significant rules. So that's a fund when you have, let's say you own a house by chance, if you just bought a new house and you want to secret some money away because shit happens, stuff breaks, right? So let's pretend that you have to replace your roof and that happens every 10 years. There's 2 ways to do it. You can self-insure it, and when the time comes for a new roof, you have to go into your checking account or take a second mortgage and fix your roof. Or you can put away $1,000 a year for 10 years or $5,000 a year, whatever the cost of the new roof was going to be. And in 10 years, you will have a fund of money in a separate bank account. Oh, I need a new roof. I'm going to take it from that. Or you have to replace your driveway. You can either do it from your own money that year of your income, or you've saved each year because you know how long a driveway will last. We have a list of everything in the ballpark. Seats need to be replaced every 15 years. The scoreboard every 12 years. You have to do painting every 5 years. So you literally go event by event. That costs money. Then you present value it, meaning if I have to spend 10 million in 10 years, what do I have to save today to have 10 million in 10 years? And that's the Capital Reserve Fund. It's not used to sign players. It's not used to do fix the grass, which is something that happens every year. It's for big, literally capital projects. And the Capital Reserve Fund for Miami is funded by the city, the county, and the team. The city puts in $250,000 a year, and the county and the team put in $750,000 a year every year for the first 10 years. But that deal now runs out because in the first 10 years, this is funny, Billy, the last issue on the table
You address Billy Corbin.
Stadium negotiation was what happens if the Capital Reserve Fund is not sufficient to pay for a capital expenditure. So what happens if you have to do a new roof and there's not enough money in the Capital Reserve Fund? You can't have a leaky roof. You have to fix your roof. The Marlins agreed. They wanted the Marlins to pay for any overage for the length of the lease, which is 38 years. And we said no chance. Even though I knew I'd be dead in 38 years, there was no way that I was going to make the next owner have to pay for any overage, because $1 million a year in the Capital Reserve Fund, or it's 1.75, is not enough to keep a baseball stadium going, because we were going to have other events and all the things that are necessary to have a roof, and you have to update your stadium, etc. So the Marlins agreed at the end that the Marlins would pay for any extra costs only in the first 10 years. But we had done a calculation, and we knew that if we put $750 in, the county put $750, and the city put $250, that there would be enough money in the Capital Reserve Fund for every project that would need to happen, and it would run out in year 10. So we knew that there'd be a new negotiation, but we figured there'd be a new mayor, there'd be something different would be happening, and we just kicked the can, and the city and county agreed to it. But we all knew what it meant, that there'd be more public money that would have to be paid, because picture Jeter right now. He's in a county-owned building. Let's say they need to have a new scoreboard. There's no way he's going to pay for a new scoreboard by himself. It's just not financially, doesn't make sense. And these fights go on in different communities. It's happening in Phoenix right now, where the Arizona Diamondbacks are threatening to leave Arizona because of a fight over the Capital Reserve Fund with the local government. So that is coming in Florida. Get ready.
And it is a terrible time for that to come up right now, because local governments there's really no money to be going to a professional sports team at the moment. It's going to be a really difficult negotiation. Even you would have the odds stacked against you.
There's no question, because that money comes from tourists and conventions, and that money is dried up, and that money is used. That money, by the way, that money helps the Heat. That money helps the Dolphins. There is money. You can say the Dolphins don't get public money, but they do. You can say the Heat don't get public money, but I think they do. So this is not uncommon. But yeah, there is a much smaller revenue stream. So the sports teams who sometimes work together in these public funding issues are really going to be at each other's necks, because there aren't enough dollars to go around.
And the person with the owner with the best relationship with local government will probably win out. Although it's difficult to even find a winner during this time. And only one team is up right now, it would appear, and that's the Marlins, to your knowledge anyways.
Yeah, the Heat redid their deal recently. Remember, they had that whole, I don't know if that got attention around here, but the Heat did a new negotiation with the county.
How jealous are you of Mickey Arison's local reputation? Because he had two arenas sort of built for him, even though he wasn't the original owner of the Miami Heat. So was he a part of the group that originally owned, and then he just took a majority stake? I'm not exactly sure how that worked. But when people would always complain about your stadium, they wouldn't complain about the Heat's. Did you always have an issue with that?
No, because I didn't focus on it. You're right. And I could have, felt sorry for myself, saying, how come everyone loves Mickey and everyone loves the Heat so much? But you know what? The Heat have done something that we couldn't do. And they've had sustained, well, I want to say sustained winning may not be accurate, because there was a time post-Shaq, pre-LeBron, when they closed the upper deck. And they didn't get a lot of attention for that. But when we closed the upper deck, it's like the end of the world.
Yeah, they did make the playoffs some of those years. There was one really bad year. Well, there was one really bad year post-Shaq, and they turned that into a number 2 pick, which was a bust. But they eventually got the flexibility to get LeBron. They were a national story every night for several years. You guys, even though you guys won one World Series title, this is now multiple generations where the Miami Heat have been relevant. Now there's a new crop of kids that are coming up, and the Heat are relevant once again. So they did something that you guys weren't able to do, what other franchises haven't been able to do down here since the 70s, and that's have sustained success.
It's hard. The worst day of my Marlins career, believe it or not, the single worst day, and this is crazy to admit because it had nothing to do with the Marlins. The decision.
Wow.
I can tell you exactly where I was. Because I had heard rumors, and I tried to get information from either Pat or Eric, who runs the business side, because I would always have to pretend that I rooted for the Heat and rooted for the Dolphins, but I rooted against them every day because I wanted them to be off the front page. I didn't want them to get column inches. That's an old word. I feel like a boomer. I didn't want them to get any attention on sports talk radio. I wanted them, if they were going to get attention, for it to be negative attention. And when I saw LeBron when he said, "I'm taking my talents to," I didn't think that I didn't hear South Beach. I didn't think that would follow in that sentence.
You just heard not the Marlins. I'm taking my talents to not the Marlins.
It was unreal because I knew that was it, right? I mean, LeBron James had just made the biggest decision. I didn't agree with the whole TV show and all of the craziness that went along with it. And then they did that opening rally where he was promising championships. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, they're going to be playing through June every single year. The Marlins are only going to get July because August starts Dolphins training camp. So that'd be 1 month. And by July, for Christ's sake, we're normally out of it already.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned that. I actually have a pretty good memory of that, like first Heat season, or I think it was the first season you guys moved into the new stadium. The Heat were a thing already. And you guys had been playing pretty well while the Heat were making a deep playoff run. And as soon as the finals ended, South Florida sports attention turns to the Miami Marlins, who are kind of hot. They're in this stadium. Things are finally happening for David Samson and Jeffrey Loria, and then, boom, right in the shitter do the Marlins go. Off to training camp, afterthought again. Is that how you remember it?
Yeah, I remember that almost perfectly, and frankly, it feels like that happened every season. So
it's just Heath Bell throwing. He was just like, here, you're saddled with more debt. Every time Heath Bell would take the mound, it's just more debt. No chance of capturing the hearts and minds of the South Florida sports fan. The 3-2.
It wasn't even that year, right? There were years that people don't remember that we had good years, that we were in it late, including 09, including 05, including 04. And we had a good year in 06, believe it or not, even though it was, we didn't make the playoffs, but Girardi had a good season. So it wasn't a complete loss. And there were good players that came through here. So a lot of what the Heat did. So I look at the Heat's team this year a little bit like I look at the Marlins 06 team, even though that came after a lot of trades when we couldn't win it in 05 and we got rid of Delgado, et cetera. But when you've got Ugla and Ramirez, and you still have Cabrera, and you've got Dontrell, and you've got a team that's good. It really is good, and of young players. The Heat I was watching the Heat play the Bucks, and I was saying, Pat Riley did it again. There's no big three. They don't have, in my mind, all respect to Jimmy Butler. For me, he's not a superstar. He's not he would be maybe a third of the big three. But the combination of players they have and the way they play for Coach Spoelstra and the way they play defense like a real team of the old days where they move their feet and they've got each other's backs, that's basketball. And I was watching the game last night, the Toronto game, and the NBA is so full of chuck and duck now where you just dribble the ball and then shoot threes. But the Heat played good basketball, and it shows that Pat Riley, he really, to me, over my career, both as a fan and in sports, he's got to be the number one guy in history.
Wow. In terms of league executive, you agree with the Magic Johnson hot take that he's the best executive in sports.
Did Magic say that?
Yeah. Well, we were actually debating, wow, I think Pat Riley might actually be a better executive than he was a head coach, and he's one of the greatest coaches of all time.
Well, you're
a Knicks guy.
He won a title with the Knicks.
Yeah, you're a Knicks guy. I forgot.
If he had won the title with us, with the Knicks in 94, and then won with the Lakers and then the Heat, he would have been the greatest of all time. I think not getting over the hump with Ewing, I think takes away from him being the best coach ever. I think you've got to give it to Phil Jackson. I think you just have to. I
want to get back to this Capital Reserve Fund. You've spoken in the past about the difficulties that sort of popped up that maybe you weren't fully prepared for in picking an all-white stadium. And I drive by that stadium all the time, and a couple weeks into your first season, you would start seeing the infield dirt start to cake on the top of the roof. And what was a pristine-looking stadium started looking a hell of a lot older than it should have really early on. And then a storm happened, and it knocked part of the tarp off the stadium. And I think this was around the time that you agreed to sell the team. And I was always wondering, who's on the hook to repair this roof? David, I see you making faces. Tell me this story.
Well, that was a bad story. So you've asked two separate things. The first one is about the color white. And we had budgeted to clean the stadium once a year, to clean the outside. And it's a big deal. You need these lifts because it's high. It's a very tall building. We did not think, and the architect and the builder, they didn't mislead us, but we should have known better. We did not think it would look as dirty. It's like when you buy a white car, you don't dream that it's going to look like crap as quickly as it does. And if you don't stay on top of it, having a white car is bad. And that's what happened, because when we had to cut things from the budget, when the team was not doing what we thought it would do from a revenue standpoint, what's the first thing you don't do? You don't wash your car as often as you normally would.
Wow. So that's what happened there. And ultimately, the stadium looked dirty because you guys weren't good.
That's funny, because we did not have the revenue we thought. So we definitely cut in that area. The second issue, and that's why we closed the upper deck. We closed it not to make it look more crowded, because that's silly. We closed it because you save operational money and you save air conditioning money by not having anybody in the upper deck. There's no concessions up there. Then you don't need any people to work up there, etc. But what you're bringing up now is what happens when you're selling something. So again, I bring you back to your house. If you're selling your house and someone has an agreement on a price to buy your house, and then a hurricane comes and the roof blows off, why would the buyer think that they're going to replace the roof?
Yeah.
They would never do that.
Yeah, you're on the hook for it.
So I had to call Jeffrey after the hurricane, and that was in 17 as the team. This was like September of 17. We were down the road with Sherman and Jeter. We were trying to close on October 1st. And all of a sudden, maybe it was August. It was very late.
It had already been announced that they are going to be the owners. You just haven't closed the deal. I think they've already had the introductory press conference, and Major League Baseball sort of announced that this was the plan, but there hadn't been a closing.
I don't think they would have done the press conference, because you can't do that until you actually buy the team. And so they would have done that upon being approved by Major League Baseball.
But it was common knowledge that they were going to be the owners.
Well, it had been leaked. I wonder who would leak that. And so I called Jeffrey, because he wasn't in Florida. And the first thing after the storm passed, my first call is to Claude Delorme, who runs the ballpark operations. I said, "Are we good?" And he said, "Everything's okay. There may be something with the roof. I'll get back to you." I didn't think anything of it. I didn't call Jeffrey. I didn't call Derek. Nothing. I get a call, "David, we got a problem. We got up there and part of the roof is gone." And I said, "Well, what? That can't be. What do you mean?" "Well, there's a roof. There's a canvas covering up there, and it snapped off. And all of a sudden, I was getting pictures sent to me of it flailing. And then I went on the news, and there were helicopters, and it became the symbol of that storm was the Marlins Park roof, because you know that Weather Channel loves that stuff. And it was a nightmare, because everyone saw it. And I wasn't going to wait for Jeter to call me, so I did the preemptive call. And I said, "Derek," I called him and I called Bruce Sherman separately. I said, "There's been a storm. We are figuring out what the damage is, but we're sure that it's covered by insurance, so you have nothing to worry about." But they did not accept that as an answer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had to. That was a purchase price adjustment, because there was no way they were going to pay for that. And there is still an ongoing issue, by the way, years later about that.
There's an ongoing issue years later. I remember it took a really long time to fix, and I never quite understood what it was. I was like, after a couple of months of driving past it, I'm like, is this an insurance thing? What's going on here? Why isn't this been taken care of? It looks like shit.
It was an insurance issue, and it was a fight with the Jeter Group issue. Because again, I knew we were going to lose this, but I was holding out as long as possible because I was trying to get them so excited. I wanted them to be approved, and I wanted them to meet the other owners and have Bruce Sherman be in the room where it happens. And I wanted them to be all excited. They're like, "Oh, $3 million to fix that. Who cares?" Because they were sure that everything was going to be great. They were going to sell out, and they were going to win, and they were going to fire everyone, and everything was going to be great. I wanted them to think everything was going to be great before it turned to crap.
All right, so you guys took the loss on that, but most sellers in that spot eventually 100%. have to eat it. Let's get back to the logo decision. What was second place? In retrospect, you would still land on that bright, colorful logo that I know you feel good about, because you said you loved it, and even in this interview, I hated it. I think there were just so many colors; it was a mess. What was second place?
I would have preferred fewer colors, and I was also concerned about Maroon 5. We had our lawyer's permission.
It looks just like the Maroon 5 logo.
So we had to get a lot of lawyers to approve that. And there was a question at the time is, do we have to contact Adam and say, hey, listen, just FYI, here's our M. And I'd already had a fight with a guy in Pensacola about the logo who claimed that we were taking his logo and sent us a lawyer letter saying, if this is your logo, you're not allowed to use it. And I had to go to Pensacola and take care of that, which I did. But it was I was concerned about Maroon 5. I was concerned about the number of colors. I was concerned about licensed apparel makers' ability to actually get it right, because it was such a particular color that was not normally on a palette. And then when you have to do tricolor printing or multiple color printing, it also costs more. So I was annoyed about that our margins on retail were not going to be as great as they could have been. But I lost every single one of those arguments.
I know this is an audio format, but if you could sort of describe, if you had your choice, what would have been the logo? What did it look like?
No, it would have been that. I love that M and I love the fish over it. I just would have made it a 2-color logo.
What would have been the
That's
two colors?
I loved the yellow and I also loved the red, the orange. I would have gotten rid of the blue.
All right, so it would have been just orange and yellow.
The blue reminded me of the teal. I wanted to get away from teal.
Why would you guys want to get away from the teal? The teal is so cool. Embrace the teal. You guys won 2 championships in the teal.
I understand, but I also know that when you are trying to sell a new wardrobe to someone, it's got to be totally different. And there are going to be people like you who refuse to buy because they hate it. But most people will say, listen, I've got the teal. Now I'm going to get, and it worked because people did buy the Marlins jerseys. We did for a terribly small market with no fans. Our numbers with the Marlins logos were middle of the pack in MLB. And that's after 2012. 2012, we were in the top 5, which you better be when you release something new. We stayed in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I mean, that it's expected that you would see a big boom. I love the orange hats, actually, because what I like so much about the teal is, this stuck out. You have all these drab, the Red Sox are there and the pinstripes, and these are boring. And here come the fresh young Marlins and with their 2 World Series wearing this ridiculous color. So at least orange was an homage to, we're unique, we're vibrant, we're ourselves. And you guys did away with the orange hats. Why?
Because a player who I still don't know who said to Jeffrey, went over my head, over Larry's head, over Mike Hill's head, and said, those were the Sunday hats, as you may recall. We wore them on Sundays. And there was a player, and this is what players used to do when they wanted something, and I would say no, or the baseball people would say no, they'd just go to Jeffrey. Because that's what you do. If you have access to an owner and you know the owner is going to say yes to you, because the owner wants the players to be happy. Believe it or not, he was not anti-player in any way. He was so pro-player, no pun intended with where he used to play, that we had to be extra anti-player just to make it level, because they would go. We bought more crap from players going to Jeffrey. We had that hyperbaric chamber in the clubhouse because there was a player who went over our head and said, I need this to recover. It may have been Mike Morse. Remember him?
I do. Mike Morse is calling shots. This is ridiculous.
I can't even tell you the number of times that players would say, we need this. We want it. We want a different road hotels. We want to do something different in terms of our travel. We want something different in terms of our uniforms. We had players choosing what uniforms. It used to be a set schedule. We would wear the home whites on Friday, the black jerseys on Saturdays, and the orange jerseys on Sundays, or whatever combination. There was a set schedule. But then some of the pitchers went to Jeffrey and said, we want to pitch in the uniforms we want to pitch in. We want to choose. So Jeffrey changed the rules that pitchers got to decide every day what uniforms they wanted to wear. And then the team would have to wear those uniforms. It just became too much.
But you guys killed the orange hat. You didn't just say, okay, player who's probably going to be here a season and a half more.
Killed it.
Why would you kill it? Who was this player that ruined the cool orange hat thing?
Can't even. The answer is I don't know. I'd have to go back and ask, because I never knew. And I never knew purposefully, because for sometimes with owners, when you get told to do something, you can talk him out of it and you can wait for emotion to pass. But there's other times when you know that you have to give. And when you're managing up, by the way, You do this when you manage up?
Yeah, you have to give people their victories, but I don't know who's this player. You're the Miami Marlins. Nobody sticks around for more than 2 seasons. I don't understand this.
That's not actually true. I mean, if you look at
D. Gordon stuck around for 3 seasons. I'm sorry.
No, but if you look at the players we had in 06, right? The core of those those players lasted. But anyway,
when we lose out on arbitration, then you're no longer a Marlin. So as long as we have your arbitration years, you can call the shots on the hats.
That's not right either. Are you trying to be like false angry right now? Because
I'm just
that's not
having
right.
Any single player, like if it was Giancarlo Stanton that went to Jeffrey Loria and said, "Hey, I don't like the orange hats," I understand, but you would remember Giancarlo Stanton.
It was not Giancarlo Stanton.
The fact that you can't remember the player means that this person was so forgettable, you can't even remember this about them, and they took away something that fans actually really dug. The orange hats are cool.
Well, we still sold them.
Right, and I'm sure they sold well. I'm sure they
sell very well. And I went to Jeffrey with some stats on that, but it just didn't work. I mean, there was no talking him out of it, so there was nothing I could do.
Okay.
The point is this. Why fight the fights that you can't win?
Do you believe in the orange hats?
I love the orange hats.
If you believed in the orange hats.
They were my favorite hats.
Fight for what you believe in. Just saying. I'm sure you did, because maybe you fought for other things that you believed in, and you gave on the orange hats, and you're always negotiating.
So everything's negotiation, and this is going to come off wrong, and I don't want to be this guy. You can't fight for everything you believe in, because to me, fighting the fights that you can't win means that you're going to lose other fights that you need to win. And that's how I would look at it. There were certain financial fights with Jeffrey that we had to win in terms of calling up players. He wanted to call up young players all the time. He didn't care about service time. He didn't care about the future. He wanted to sign deals, sign this guy, trade for that guy, do this, do that. That's the irony about Jeffrey, is everyone hated him because they thought he didn't want to win and didn't like baseball. That's all he cared about. We just didn't have money. But we had to fight from, no, we cannot do that, Jeffrey, because in 3 years we're going to lose. I don't give a crap about 3 years from now. I want to win now. But Jeffrey, we're 5 games out. We have to climb over 5 teams. It's not going to happen. We're only 4 back in the loss column. That means we're 4 games out. These are real conversations that we would have. A player would give up Braden Looper would blow a save. Get rid of him. Right? A starting pitcher would give up runs. Get rid of him. Right? That's how owners are. Those are the fights I've got to fight. If he comes to me and says, David, we got to spend $20,000 on a hyperbaric oxygenated chamber, what am I going to do? That happened with Carl Barger and his retired number. What bothered me last week that we talked about, how much am I going to fight on that when I know it's not a money issue? It's a what's right and what's wrong issue, and I'm embarrassed to say it. In real life, you want to do what's right, but when you're running a business, you have to take financial care of the business.
I never really know what we're going to talk about, and I think we got into a really good episode here with ground that we hadn't covered yet about the orange hats, the logo, the name change. So I really like this episode. Look at us. We found ourselves into another good episode here, as luck would find it. Sometimes you're in the dark searching for the light switch, and I think we got a good one here. David Samson, host of Nothing Personal. Check out his podcast. Check out his social media platforms. Always posting videos there. If you don't have the time for the entire podcast, at least follow him on Twitter so you can see some of the videos from his show, Nothing Personal. David, what are you reviewing this week?
So I got to tell you what I did yesterday that will make you laugh, because I watch a movie every single day and I'm having a hard time sleeping. That's happening too. So I watched a 40-minute documentary called Speed Cubers on Netflix. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, I'm about to change your life. There are competitions around the world for people who solve Rubik's Cubes in a speedily manner, like in 5 seconds. And not just the 3x3 cube, like a 4x4, 5x5, 6x6, or 7x7. These are kids whose hands work so fast that I can't. By the way, I've never solved a Rubik's Cube. I can't solve a Rubik's Cube. I hate the Rubik's Cubes. And they were part of my childhood.
Considering the palette that you picked for the Miami Marlins.
That's, by the way, Rubik's Cube was our spiritual guide. This is a show about the World Championship Speed Cube. And like trophies, it's a real competition. People travel the world, and you've got to watch it. It's only 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it seems just sort of empty. Your jaw's just left agape because you're watching how quickly people are solving Rubik's cubes.
It's insane. So I'd never seen anything like it. It's speed in a way. Like when I watch speed chess, I recognize that I get that. Like that's fun to watch. But speed chess holds nothing to this. So Speed Cubers, it's only 40 minutes. Right. And I promise you, you will not be sorry. One of the kids, there's like a competition and a best friendship between the two best Speed Cubers in the world. And they go at each other all over, but yet they're friends off the court. And it is fascinating what it takes to do the way they practice. They have cubes in their hands at all times. At all times. There is a competition. They can do it, Mike, with one hand. They can solve a Rubik's Cube, which I can't because my hands are so small. They can do a Rubik's Cube solving like in 8 seconds with one hand.
I'm going to check this out. I'm finally getting back into watching movies. I don't have a sofa in my home, so I can only watch live sports. I'm watching everything from an office chair. Last night was the first night that I'm like, I'm going to try to lay in bed and watch a movie start to finish. I succeeded. I can't do that. I watched Primal.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, Primal. You know, classic B movie starring Nicolas Cage. You know how much I love Nicolas Cage. This film delivers, David.
Is that with John Cusack as well?
No, John Cusack. Although Nicolas Cage is starting to look like John Cusack a little bit.
Who's he in it with?
So Michael Imperioli and Famke Janssen are the co-stars in this film. Oddly enough, this is actually an understated performance from one Nicolas Cage. When you consider what he's done in the past, the best Nicolas Cage performance in this movie is actually by someone who's not Nicolas Cage. The person who plays the villain kind of looks like Nicolas Cage and is just doing a Nicolas Cage impression the entire time. However, the dialogue is awful, which means it's great. The CGI is worse, which means it's great. I mean, there isn't a likable character. I don't understand why we're supposed to like the hero other than he's Nicolas Cage. They tell us he's a hero, but he seems like a second-rate black market big game hunter that skirts all the rules, but he's our hero.
Is this a money grab for Nick?
Everything's a money grab for Nick.
Yeah, you're right. Who am I kidding? I feel terribly about that. His career got off to such a great start with so many great movies. And what happens when you run out of money is you have to say yes a lot. Yeah,
the Capital Reserve Fund has long been extinguished for Nicolas Cage.
Islands and homes and cars and weird artifacts like dinosaur skulls and just crazy stuff, I think, and he ran out of money. Please watch Speed Cubers. It's only 40 minutes. Okay. This is not like a major investment. It's like a half-hour sitcom plus 10 minutes.
It's hard.
It'll blow your mind.
It's hard. I put 3 TVs in my living room, in my home theater, and last night I didn't have enough TVs for all the sports. I hate all the sports going on at the same time. I really don't like it. It's cool for this 1 year, I guess, but the fact that I have to worry about Heat playoff games and a Cleveland Browns Thursday nighter and the start of the Premier League season, and there's Marlins baseball that's interesting, and the Stanley Cup finals are going on. It's a disaster. I don't like it. And, the Hurricanes start today, but I have Xfinity now, and I can't watch it because they're on the ACC network. I mean, what is that all about? Poor Barry Jackson is having an aneurysm on Twitter every day about the ACC network.
They want too much money. And Xfinity said, forget it. Because you have to call Xfinity and you have to say, I am canceling Xfinity because I want the ACC network. And then your friend has to do it. And then 200,000 of your friends have to do it. And then maybe Xfinity will buy the ACC network. But other than that, it's not worth it because not enough people are leaving Xfinity.
Xfinity, I demand my ACC network.
I'd like you to make that call. Make the call.
I have a tech coming over on Friday. Don't even get me started on this whole Xfinity.
Talk about a fight not worth fighting. That's it. Trying to get ACC network on Xfinity. Good luck.
I'd rather have the ACC network on Xfinity than even the Orange Marlins had. So we'll see. All right, David Samson.
Cubers, Mikey.
I'm going to check it out.
I promise you. Next week. I watched Kingdom for you, and that was a lot more than 40 minutes.
Yes, that was a big investment.
By the way, worth every penny. But 40 minutes, Speed Cubers. Let's see if your listeners will watch it because I couldn't believe it. I could not believe what I was watching.
What were your thoughts on the final season of Kingdom? Because I felt it was rushed and I felt like there was so much meat on the bone, so much story still to tell. I don't feel like all the issues between one of the sons and the dad was resolved. I was left wanting more, which sometimes is a good thing, but not when I feel like the main storyline of that season felt rushed.
So I haven't read this, so I'm asking you, you may know. Did they know that was 3 and done before they wrote 3, or was it done after 3 and they ended it at the end of 3?
So I don't know this answer, but I watched the season, and to me, it's written like they were made aware that it would be the final season as production was either starting or already underway. It didn't seem to me like that was the plan. It felt like the slow burn of season 1 and season 2 was building to something more than what we saw in season 3, and they just had to make the best out of a bad situation because they were funded by DirecTV, and DirecTV was being sold to AT&T, and they're now pulling out of the original content game. And I don't even know if you've seen, they're no longer putting DirecTV satellites in the sky. They are phasing DirecTV out. So that was when you're not performing on the field, you have to start cutting some budgets. And sometimes what is analogous to the White Stadium getting power cleaned is, you don't get a season 4 of Kingdom on DirecTV.
Did you know that in real life that the father and his lawyer were married?
In real life?
In real life. And I can't remember the character's name.
Frank Grillo was married to
the woman who played the lawyer.
Wow.
His lawyer, and they're now divorced recently. But while they were filming, that was his wife.
How good looking is that Frank Grillo? My God.
He's the guy who was in Billions before it got stopped by COVID. He was in the last season as the artist in Billions.
Yeah, I mean, a handsome devil, that guy. He's been on our show before, and Dan didn't even know it. Dan's also since fallen in love with that Kingdom show, and I had to tell him, yeah, we had Frank Grillo on the show. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, Billy got into a fight with him saying that he kept dyeing his hair, and Frank Grillo didn't want to hear it.
Does Grillo have any actual tattoos?
I don't think so. I follow him on Instagram. The guy lays thirst traps after thirst traps. Hang on one second. I can tell you right now. This guy's so put together. I could never. I
read an entire article about the tattoos of Kingdom and how each actor got to have a say in what his tattoos would be.
Look, here he is shirtless. No real tattoos there.
So he's got no tattoos. There you go.
No, but he is.
Because I think he looks badass with those tattoos.
Dude, he looks so badass. He's got the greatest hair. He's just awesome. And the fake ears too, because like Jonathan Tucker had like the torn up cauliflower ears. Nobody has those ears in Hollywood. Man, look at it. Now I'm down the rabbit hole just staring at Frank Grillo thirst traps on Instagram. Thanks a lot.
By the way, that's just a Thursday for you, Mike.
Speaking of, we'll talk to you next Thursday, David. Thank you. Speaking of, we'll talk to you next Thursday, David. Thank you.